This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Annie Coleman in St. Louis, Missouri in May 2006. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Chapter 36. As soon as we reckoned everybody was asleep that night, we went down the lightning rod and shut ourselves up in the lean-to and got out our pile of foxfire and went to work. We cleared everything out of the way, about 4 or 5 foot along the middle of the bottom log. Tom said we was right behind Jim's bed now, and we'd dig in under it, and when we got through there, couldn't nobody in the cabin ever know there was any hole there, because Jim's counterpin hung down most to the ground, and you'd have to raise it up and look under to see the hole. So we dug and dug with the case knives till most midnight, and then we was dog-tired and our hands was blistered, and yet you couldn't see we'd done hardly anything. At last I says, "This ain't no 37-year job. This is a 38-year job, Tom Sawyer." He never said nothin', but he sighed, and pretty soon he stopped diggin'. And then, for a good little while, I knowed that he was thinkin'. Then he says, "It ain't no use, Huck, it ain't a-goin' to work. If we was prisoners it would, because then we'd have as many years as we wanted, and no hurry, and we couldn't get but a few minutes to dig every day while they was changin' watches, and so our hands wouldn't get blistered, and we could keep it up right along, year in and year out, and do it right, and the way it ought to be done. But we can't fool along. We got to rush. We ain't got no time to spare. If we was to put in another night this way, we'd have to knock off for a week to let our hands get well. Couldn't touch a case knife with them sooner." "Well, then, what we going to do, Tom?" "I'll tell you. It ain't right, and it ain't moral, and I wouldn't like it to get out, but there ain't only just the one way. We got to dig him out with the picks and let on it's case knives." "Now you're talking," I says. "Your head gets leveler and leveler all the time, Tom Sawyer," I says. "Picks is the thing, moral or no moral. And as for me, I don't care shucks for the morality of it nohow. When I start in to steal a nigger or a watermelon or a Sunday school book, I ain't noways particular how it's done, so it's done. What I want is my nigger, or what I want is my watermelon, or what I want is my Sunday school book. And if a pick's the handiest thing, that's the thing I'm a-going to dig that nigger or that watermelon or that Sunday school book out with, and I don't give a dead rat what the authorities thinks about it nuther." "Well," he says, "there's excuse for picks and letting on in a case like this. If it weren't so, I wouldn't approve of it, nor I wouldn't stand by and see the rules broke, because right is right and wrong is wrong, and a body ain't got no business doing wrong when he ain't ignorant and knows better. It might answer for you to dig Jim out with a pick, without any letting on, because you don't know no better, but it wouldn't for me because I do know better. Give me a case knife." He had his own by him, but I handed him mine. He flung it down and says, "Give me a case knife." I didn't know just what to do, but then I thought. I scratched around amongst the old tools and got a pickaxe and give it to him, and he took it and went to work and never said a word. He was always just that particular, full of principle. So then I got a shovel, and we picked and shoveled, turned about, and made the fur fly. We stuck to it about a half an hour, which is as long as we could stand up, but we had a good deal of a hole to show for it. When I got upstairs I looked out at the window and see Tom doing his level best with the lightning rod, but he couldn't come it, his hands was so sore. At last he says, "It ain't no use, it can't be done. What you reckon I better do? Can't you think of no way?" "Yes," I says, "but I reckon it ain't regular. Come up the stairs and let on it's a lightning rod." So he done it. Next day Tom stole a pewter spoon and a brass candlestick in the house for to make some pens for Jim out of, and 6 tallow candles, and I hung around the nigger cabins and laid for a chance, and stole 3 tin plates. Tom says it wasn't enough, but I said nobody wouldn't ever see the plates that Jim throwed out, because they'd fall in the dog fennel and Jimson weeds under the window hole. Then we could tote them back, and he could use them over again. So Tom was satisfied. Then he says, "Now, the thing to study out is how to get the things to Jim." "Take them in through the hole," I says, "when we get it done." He only just looked scornful, and said something about nobody ever heard of such an idiotic idea, and then he went to studying. By and by he said he had ciphered out 2 or 3 ways, but there warn't no need to decide on any of them yet. Said we got to post Jim first. That night we went down the lightning rod a little after 10, and took one of the candles along, and listened under the window hole and heard Jim snoring. So we pitched it in, and it didn't wake him. Then we whirled in with the pick and shovel, and in about 2 hours and a half the job was done. We crept in under Jim's bed and into the cabin, and pawed around and found the candle and lit it, and stood over Jim a while, and found him looking hearty and healthy. And then we woke him up gentle and gradual. He was so glad to see us he most cried, and called us honey, and all the pet names he could think of, and was for having us hunt up a cold chisel to cut the chain off of his leg with right away, and clearing out without losing any time. But Tom, he showed him how unregular it would be, and set down and told him all about our plans, and how we could alter them in a minute any time there was an alarm, and not to be the least afraid, because we would see he got away, sure. So Jim, he said it was all right, and we sat there and talked over old times a while, and then Tom asked a lot of questions.